coming back to what other sorts of reform we need. What, you mentioned electoral reform in terms of proportional representation, electoral reform in terms of money in politics. What about judiciary, and what about, you've talked a lot about gender budgeting. You've talked a lot about gender budgeting in terms of finance planning and the political economy. But I think AIDWA has about 50,000 justice centers, if I'm not mistaken, where you take up cases of women, whether it's domestic violence, khap panchayats, dowry, etc. We find a huge hindrance in terms of genuine legal aid available for the poor, for women, for any disadvantaged section. And I don't see the courts doing enough about generating really good legal aid. What sort of reform do we need in terms of the judicial system and the police system maybe?
I mean, quite frankly, Teesta, you're a person who has the most experience of the judiciary, and since you've got so many cases in court, you would know how frustrating the whole judicial system is. And for us, because working with AIDWA for, well, since AIDWA was formed, and also, looking at the way that other social movements also have faced such blockages and barriers. One thing, see, apart from the independence of the judiciary, which neither the collegium nor the executive, in fact, both have been responsible for the present state of affairs. Equally. But I think I sort of tend to agree that, giving full power to the executive, even in terms of numbers of the appointing committee, that's really problematic. So we do have a situation where we had suggested that there should be a balance between the two, and there should also be some independent expert voices of people who, who are reputed to have played a very important role in judicial reform. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at. But the other thing is the bias. I mean, the prejudice and the bias in the judgments against women, against, in many cases, Dalits, and against Muslims, against minorities.
How do you address bias in the judiciary?
God, I tell you, I mean,
I can't even speak about it, because if I do,
I mean, some of the things that we've had to do is just demonstrated courts, just make a public spectacle of it, just shame judgments.
The Bhanwari Devi judgment of the Rajasthan High Court.
Bhanwari Devi, and that was one. The other was the most terrible judgment of the Delhi High Court, in which they said that dowry is an acceptable traditional practice of Hindu communities. Then we had contempt of court against us at that time, and we had to fight the case. So there's so many cases like that.
And the witnesses turning hostile, this whole issue.
That is really...
no, I believe it's because the trials take so long, that there's no time-bound end to the problem inside.
That is absolutely critical. It's
that people need closure, and the closure will only come if there's a time-bound trial.
No, and not only that, because there is no monitoring of that case.
By higher judiciary.
Therefore, what happens is, in a case which has very high stakes involved, in a case where powerful people are involved, in a case where politics rests on what happens in a particular case, there are going to be instances again and again where witnesses are pressured and also bought out.
Should we not have CCTVs in the courtroom?
You should have, but unfortunately...
I don't mean media cameras, I mean CCTVs just for the courts to record how judicial behavior is happening. So in case there's a problem, the television camera...
I mean, that's an interesting suggestion. Frankly, I hadn't thought of CCTV in the court, but certainly, I tell you, we're going to come to a situation in this country, as far as so many cases are concerned, where, forget the CCTV in the court, what is happening and where they're meeting witnesses, and how they're buying out witnesses, and how they're pressurizing witnesses. That's really, really a very... And one more thing I would just like to mention here is a number of innocent Muslims who have been thrown into jail in case after case without evidence.
Whose failure is it?
Whose
failure is it?
Well, one, undoubtedly it's the failure of politics.
Because so everybody is responsible in that?
No, of the ruling party. Why everybody? Okay. Those who are doing it. The first thing, and then you don't control the police. You don't control your PROs of the police. The first thing they'll say is, and ministers, in those governments where this is happening, and I'll include Maharashtra and include the UP central government at that time, and BJP to hai hai. I mean, before they've even reached the spot, they're giving names of all kinds of people, and all of them happen to be minority community, and that's why the Hindutva terror groups, you know, for so many cases, they got away with it because you were arresting the wrong people, and people were saying, yeah, we want an arrest, and therefore you give them an arrest, and you also put your communal bias right there.
How many women are there in the Central Committee and Politburo now?
Well, Politburo is still only one. And in the Central Committee, of course, it's increased. We're now 12.
So your
that's
battle
good.
was well fought.
I think it's everybody's battle.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brinda. Thank you very, very much.